Hi, I'm Travis Guiley. It's nice to meet you, CeCe Moore.
Should we? Okay.
I don't know.
Maybe you don't.
Whatever. Maybe not. Then you'd have my DNA, right?
I will have your DNA. You're right.
It's crazy to think. But yes, I'm Travis Guiley. Here to just interview you on really anything you want to talk about. Parabon, I know that's where you are at, right?
Yes.
And that's your thing. So we can talk about that or really anything you want. But first, I got to ask you, how many ISHIs have you been to?
Oh boy, my first ISHI was 2014.
Okay.
I believe I was the first genealogist ever invited to speak at ISHI, long before investigative genetic genealogy was a thing. And I spoke at a workshop.
Okay.
And I had a talk called The Power of Genetic Genealogy, which I think we've now proven the power of genetic genealogy.
I feel like that, yeah.
You know, I wanted to introduce the law enforcement and forensic audience to that idea of using it. I mean, what better conference than this, the International Symposium for Human Identification. And genetic genealogy is probably the most powerful tool for human identification that we've seen in many, many, many years. And so it's been a long time coming. And I've been to most ISHIs, although I had to cancel one year, unfortunately, the last minute. My son's father died a few days before ISHI, so once I canceled on you guys, unfortunately.
Well, I think that's okay, CeCe.
I missed 2015.
People would be all right with that.
Yeah,
for that reason.
I wouldn't cancel unless it was something, you know, really, really important. So yeah, I have to say I missed that one, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I've been here quite a few years.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever met in person the owners of Paragon was here.
Okay.
It was ISHI 2017.
Okay.
They had a booth, and we'd been talking on the phone a lot, and I stopped by the booth and got to meet them, and we hatched up some plans about working together.
Okay.
And now we have over 175 successful identifications in law enforcement cases. Mostly suspect cases, but we do have an increasing number of Jane and John Doe cases.
All right.
We have a contract with the Oregon State Medical Examiner, and we're working dozens of unidentified remains cases with them. We are having a lot of success with our whole genome sequencing program. We have brilliant bioinformatics scientists, Harvard trained at Parabon, and I'm so fortunate because these remain cases can be very challenging because of bacterial contamination, degradation, and they have created this incredible algorithm to try to make these viable for upload to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. And we've seen some amazing successes recently on cases that really seemed unworkable, unsolvable, and we've been able to provide an identification on those.
So what is that whole genome identification? What's the benefit of that? I mean, you're getting a lot of information. How is that even useful?
You know, it's seeming to work a lot better than the microarray process for contamination, bacterial contamination. So on these human remains cases, you get a lot of bacterial growth, unfortunately. And so it's difficult to separate out that bacterial DNA from the human DNA. And the microarray, doesn't seem to have as much success at it. Mixtures, you want to use microarray. With most of our suspect cases, we're doing fantastically with microarray, with the SNP genotyping process. But with the remains cases, we've really started moving to whole genome sequencing more and more, especially since our scientists came up with this new algorithm. It's making all the difference. There are cases that were not workable a few months ago that we now have an identification. So I think that's really exciting. Genetic genealogy didn't have a lot of attention from people outside our little niche field until law enforcement started using it. So it's exciting to see the advancements that are happening now that we've got academia, forensic scientists working on this problem. You know, how do you make these crime scene or unidentified remains samples viable for genetic genealogy analysis?
Yeah, that's incredible. So really genetic genealogy is super young, right?
Well, it's not as young as most people think it is, because we've been doing it for many years.
Right.
I started developing the techniques for adoption a decade
okay.
ago.
Okay.
And had already used them successfully for hundreds and hundreds of unknown parentage cases.
So back then, did you have to go and get the DNA? I mean, you had to have, because there were not places where these things were uploaded to, right? So that didn't come till later, or
there's
was
been genetic genealogy commercial DNA testing companies for over 20 years.
Wow. Okay. I didn't
Family
know.
Tree
Okay.
DNA launched
Okay.
in 2000.
Oh, okay.
Now,
So
we
that
weren't
is-
using autosomal DNA yet.
Okay.
23andMe introduced that in
Yep.
2009.
Okay.
But as soon as
more
they
recent.
did, I quit everything else I was doing, started
Okay.
working on it full time, tested 40 of my family members, started a blog. I jumped in with both feet.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I had a production company with my partner at the time, and I just sort of dropped it. And all I wanted to do was work on autosomal DNA.
Okay.
And at the time, there were no experts. There's
Right.
still no degree in it. There's still no licensing. And so it was a wide open field. And it allowed me to really get my foot in the door early and become known as an expert, even though I don't have a science degree. There was no way to be educated for this.
Sure.
We had to, pave our own path here,
Yeah.
brave our own trail, and it's just been an incredible thing to watch from the front lines and be part of.
Well, that's, that kind of tells me that this kind of a conference in ISHI is a powerful place, right?
Yes.
To be able to bring that information to and get that out, get out your new technologies and new methods.
Yeah, this is really the most important conference for me annually.
Okay.
Other than my own, I do an Institute for Genetic Genealogy conference, but
Okay.
within the law enforcement forensic world, I always want to come here and check in with everyone, and I want to share the advancements that have happened during that year. And we've had so many advancements just in the last year or two. So last year I was talking about the Paul Franzak case.
Yes.
So I didn't get a chance to talk so much about our casework.
Right.
So I have about 2 years to catch everyone up on.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that I'm always given an opportunity to present here and share the advancements, because I just think it's amazing how much progress we've been making now. It's certainly not standing still. It's not a static field at all.
No, that's so very true. And where do you see this future going? Like, if you had a crystal ball and you could pick out, I think things are going to kind of continue along this line. Where do you think the future of this is going?
I think as long as we all use best practices and are ethical and responsible with the very powerful technique of genetic genealogy, we will eventually have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of cases solved. And anytime there is a very personal, violent crime, it's very hard not to leave DNA behind.
Right.
So I don't think there will be cold cases when you've got a DNA sample available.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to be able to get away with raping and very intimate murders anymore. And I don't really think we'll see that type of serial killer or serial rapist anymore, because we'll be able to stop them in their tracks.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's, it has to be, such a great feeling to have, captured as many people as you have identified as many people as you have, because the lives that you're touching with that kind of ability is amazing, right?
I just feel incredibly fortunate that I happened to be interested in this at the very beginning and get involved in it when it was so brand new and there were no requirements. I mean, as I said, there still aren't, but it's a lot harder to get into nowadays. I'm so lucky I just happened upon this incredible job where I get to really make a meaningful difference.
Yeah.
I think my whole life that's what I wanted, was to do something that would have a really positive effect on people. And so I just feel incredibly fortunate. I couldn't have ended up in a better place than I am now, being able to help these families and also the detectives.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned is how emotionally invested they are in these cases.
I can only imagine. That's true.
Really thought they'd be desensitized because they deal with so many terrible things.
Yeah.
They're not at all.
No,
They're
that's
very
awesome.
emotional about these cases. And for many of them, it's the case of their career.
Yeah.
And we're able to finally help them resolve it. I don't say we have 175 solves, because we're not solving it.
Right.
These detectives
Right.
are doing
They're
that.
doing that.
But being able to assist with that and provide these potential identifications, I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
I'm so incredibly fortunate.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yes, and thank you for doing that, because I know you don't need to be thanked by me, but just thank you for continuing this work.
Yeah,
it
certainly
is
my
important.
pleasure.
I'm not personally affected by that, but you just knowing that those people out
Yeah.
there being helped it's really amazing. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's an incredible thing, and I think we can do a lot more of it. But as I mentioned, we have to be responsible.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool, and I kind of harp on this a lot, but if we don't use it responsibly and ethically, we could lose it.
Yeah.
And so doing something that maybe is questionable just to solve one case, as important as that one case is, it could put many, many other cases at risk. So I just, beg everyone to follow the terms of service,
Yep.
to act responsibly, to make decisions that can't be twisted by the media or make what we're doing look bad to the public. Because
Right.
this is one tool that absolutely relies on public support.
Yeah.
If people stop testing,
Yeah.
if they remove their data, we can't help
Yes.
on these cases anymore. So you have to think of the big picture,
Yep.
and we have to approach this in a very transparent way. Don't do something that you wouldn't want everyone to know you did.
Yeah, I think that's good. Transparency is good. People love the truth, and if you can, present that and tell them how much it's going to benefit others, just as we've just talked here. I mean, that's just so powerful. I don't know why people wouldn't want that as part of
I
their
mean,
life.
there's things you can do in genetic genealogy that are kind of shortcuts,
Sure.
but they're not ethical.
Okay.
You got to take the long way around.
Yeah.
It's doable. You just got to put the work in. If you have committed detectives, which we do so much of the time, that are proactive, you work together and you get to where you need to be. It might be quicker and faster to go against terms of service, to do something unethical, but in the long run, I think it will all cost us greatly if we do that.
So during your job with your position, are you working with those detectives? Is that
I
a
am.
part of your work?
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
calling
virtually,
you, or
not
they're
in person.
virtually? Okay.
Yeah, but absolutely, I'm on the phone with detectives every day.
Okay.
We have case managers, it's one of the things I love about Parabon is I have this incredible team, so I can focus on what I'm best at. But we have found over the years that it's more efficient for me to be able to talk to the detectives and work collaboratively. We used to
Okay.
go through the case managers a little bit more because they wanted to keep me really focused on genetic genealogy. But I've worked very closely with a number of detectives now because some cases I can work on it over the weekend, provide a name on Monday. But there's other cases where we have to be very collaborative, and I have to, provide recommendations based on the genetic genealogy, kind of hold their hand through it because they're not,
Yeah.
most of them aren't used to genetic genealogy. They've got to do things they haven't done before.
Yeah.
Convince people to upload to GEDmatch. I'll say reach out to these people, see if you
Oh,
can
wow.
get them to upload because we need this as a reference test.
Right.
Some cases, they're doing kinship samples. They're trying to convince people to provide a swab. It can be daunting.
Yeah, that's tricky.
So I've just had some really fantastic relationships with detectives, some of whom were about to retire, and this was the
Okay.
last case that they just had to get solved before retirement.
Yeah.
We had one where we finally identified the guy the week that this longtime detective was going to be retiring. So he won't get to be there through the whole trial and all, but he at least got to be the one to question this
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And that's just incredible. So I've been working with them increasingly. It's very time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
It's harder to work as many cases,
Yes.
but I do think it's more meaningful for both sides, for me, my team, and also for the detectives to be able to work with us collaboratively.
So through Parabon, how many employees actually work for Parabon?
Parabon has a whole nother side of it I'm not
Okay.
involved in.
Okay.
So I can't really say, but
Okay.
on the snapshot side, we have Dr. Ellen Graytack,
Okay.
Harvard PhD, amazing
Okay.
geneticist, working in bioinformatics, and Dr. Janet Katie, who works with her. They're doing incredible things. Then I have 3 genetic genealogists on
Okay.
my team that work with me, and then we have 2 amazing case managers, Tom Shaw and Caitlin, that are the ones that you contact if you have a case that you want to get
Yeah.
assessed, meaning do we have enough DNA? Do we have the right type of sample? And what are some ideas for perhaps getting more DNA? So that's where they're incredible, because they take that part of it for me, and then
Okay.
I usually don't get involved until that sample is uploaded. So there's been a lot of work that's happened before it gets uploaded to GEDmatch.
Okay, so that's giving me a better picture. So Parabon might not be doing the DNA extraction. They might not even be getting the samples. They are getting that information as best information they can get from other sources.
Yeah,
right?
we're not
Other
a lab.
companies. Right.
So
okay.
we're
Okay.
directing, so if say a detective reaches out to us,
Right.
or a lab manager, we're directing them
Okay.
of what they need to get, what they need, the requirements for genetic genealogy, how much DNA. They look at the degradation index and contamination. If they don't have enough DNA left, maybe they talk about ways to look for more in the evidence.
Okay.
That's not what I'm an expert in.
Right.
You know, then
Sure.
we tell them which lab to send it to, who we're working with. And then we work with the lab and we get the file. Then our bioinformatics scientists work on the file. And this is a step most people don't realize.
Yes.
It doesn't go lab to me.
Right.
I mean, it can sometimes, but
Yeah.
that's the most pristine of samples.
Sure.
Most of the time, there's this extremely essential step in between where bioinformatics takes place, readying that file to make it viable.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people involved before it comes to me.
Yeah. And to be doing that with that small of a crew, and then having helped 170 some odd cases.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. That seems to be like a lot of work.
I love it so much.
wow.
I barely sleep these days.
That's crazy. You've got to get your sleep.
I
young
know, but
lady.
I can't stop. When I'm on a roll, you know, these 16-hour sessions. My weekend hobby now is, you know, identifying Jane or John Doe.
Oh yeah, that's a
because
great hobby.
The suspect cases can be very difficult. You know,
Yeah.
we are limited to the opt-in database
Yes.
at GEDmatch,
Yes.
but Jane and John Doe's can be compared against the whole database. So if I get a little frustrated on my cases, on the weekends I'll go and work, say, one of the Oregon Jane or John Doe cases that we're working with Dr. Vance.
Okay.
And most weekends I can identify one or two of
amazing.
those. And that keeps me going for the week when we've got some of the long time difficult cases.
Yeah.
And you know, just in the last week and a half, we have finally made identifications in 3 of my oldest cases,
No kidding.
suspect cases. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that.
Oh,
That's-
it's just such a relief
Yeah.
for those families. I always feel so
Yeah.
guilty when they see all these
Oh.
other cases being solved, and they know we're working on their case.
Yeah.
And you know, just some cases are very, very difficult.
Yeah. Well, congrats on getting those taken care of. That's
Well,
amazing.
it's all dependent on the detectives. You know,
Yeah.
in those cases, we helped identify a killer that was finally just announced 2 weeks ago. The top match was 30 centimorgans.
That's not a lot.
And it never would have happened if those detectives were not incredibly dedicated and proactive. We were on the phone day and night for 8 days straight, and it only took 8 days to find him. 8
What?
days. I had told them this is not
To
workable.
go from the computer and doing all the informatics
Yeah.
and coming up with this
Yes.
37 centimorgans, and then driving
30
out
centimorgans.
and going to a guy's house and arresting him?
Yes. Oh, and it was not because of me. It's because
Yeah.
these detectives did every single thing I asked them to do.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
hit dead end, and they didn't sleep, and they just kept trying, and then we hit upon the right person, got
That's
somebody to
outstanding.
upload that was a much closer match, and bingo. So, you know, there's only so much I can do.
Right.
Like I said, in some cases, it's like that. Okay, we know who the DNA contributor is, but on many cases, it's dependent on those detectives to go out and get those reference samples and do that investigative work.
So, CeCe, I don't know of a lot of companies that are like this. Are there any other companies that are doing this kind of from beginning to end work that you are doing at Parabon?
There are, but the companies are a little different. Some of them
Okay.
have their own labs.
Sure. Okay.
Then there's DNA Doe Project that has
Okay.
had incredible success on
Right.
unidentified remains cases, and they really led the way with the whole genome sequencing on those cases. And they have a great bioinformaticist, Kevin Lord.
Okay.
But they're a different setup than us. You know, they crowdfund, they get
Okay.
grants. With us, we can do that, but most of our cases are funded by the agency or by grants that the agency has applied
Okay.
for directly.
Yeah.
So it's a very different approach. Their poor Margaret Press, who runs it, has to really deal with a lot of the lab processing
Okay.
and getting the samples and the administration of that. And that's where I'm so fortunate. I can just focus on the
Yeah.
genetic genealogy.
Yeah, that's nice.
So there are a number of companies. There's some small companies, some really talented genetic genealogists that have started their own. But they do have a much more of a burden than I do because they don't have that team of support
Yep.
that I have. And then there's huge companies like Bodhi
Yes.
that has a
Yep.
genetic genealogy department.
Yep.
DNA Labs International has a genetic genealogy department. So we're far from alone, but
Yeah.
I think our model is somewhat unique.
Yeah, it does seem to be. That's so great. And I do have just one other crazy question, and that is, what Disney character do you most identify with?
Well, that's a good one.
What Disney character?
So
would-
growing up, my
Okay.
favorite was Sleeping Beauty, but I don't
Yes.
get much sleep, so I guess I can't say that I identify with her.
Okay.
But I was a singer,
Okay.
and I have sort of a Disney voice, so I've sang a ton of Disney songs over the years. Got to perform in front of Michael Eisner once when I was in college,
What?
singing Disney songs. I did a whole Disney medley.
Why?
Yeah. When You Wish Upon a Star, all kinds of things. We wove them in and out.
Oh my gosh.
But I really enjoy singing Ariel's song,
Okay.
the Part of Your World.
How does that one go?
Well, it's hard to sing in a mask. I'm, cottonmouth from the mask.
Yeah, just
Look
give it
at
a
this
shot.
stuff, isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete? Wouldn't you think I'm the girl who has everything?
Oh,
So,
God,
you don't want to
who's
sing
it,
with a
what's
mask.
it's galore. Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you for doing that. That was totally impromptu, and I really appreciated that.